What are we looking at here, Fabrice?
All right. So here we're looking at one of these plants, these Asian greens that we'll be giving out. So this is Japanese winter mustard. It makes these purpley green leaves, and it's super, super tasty and very, very hardy. This plant actually is self-sown. We had some plants here which we let go to seed, so we could save the seed. And in fact, and this is one of its children, which popped up in the last few weeks. Must have popped up in maybe late July or something. Say a few words about how to plant the plants you'll be getting from us.
Okay.
So we basically, the kinds of vegetables you get from us are the ones that do well in plugs. So you'll be getting a little plug like this, with just a bit bigger than this, maybe a few days older than this.
So it's got a proper root growth.
It's already got proper root growth on it. It needs a few more roots because you can see this plug starting to kind of crumble a bit. But you know, a couple more days, 3-4 more days, and the roots will hold this plug well together quite well.
Okay.
Now, something that people sometimes get wrong is they attempt to concertina the baby plant up by crushing the cell.
Yeah.
That damages the roots, and it means we can't reuse these plastic containers, which we will reuse if they're not too damaged.
Oh, do you want everybody to bring back their containers?
So long as they're not broken.
Okay.
If somebody's concertinaed them, they're no use to us because we can't really. You can't get the second lot of seedlings you try them, you can't get them out because of the concertinaing.
Yes. Yeah.
So basically, to get them out, make sure your plants are well watered. If they're dry, they will stick. And then I just tweak and let gravity do the rest of the work.
Okay. Yeah.
And then they're ready to catch them. One thing to bear in mind is the stem of these young plants is actually very fragile. You can do damage to them without even seeing it. They've got all the vascular tissue, all the veins in the plant are in there.
Yeah.
And if you pinch too hard there, you can set these small plants back. So I try not to touch those too much.
Okay.
But you know, once they get quite large, it's not a problem.
So you've got to be really gentle.
Be gentle. After a while, it becomes really, really quick.
Yeah.
The next thing to people sometimes get wrong is spacing. All crops seem to have an optimum spacing, more or less. If you plant crops too close together, sometimes they don't quite work. Less of a problem with leafy greens because all you're worried about is leaves. But anything you want a root or a head from, like a cabbage or a turnip or whatever, or a beetroot, put them too close together, all you'll get is leaves. You won't get the business end. You'll just get leafy stuff. So do give them spacing. For most of what you're going to get this winter, 8 inches, 20 centimetres will work fine.
Okay. So you give something that small, 20 centimetres between that and the next one?
This is actually a Dwarf Pak Choi. Maybe give this 10 centimetres. Okay. But there's 2 plants here. So again, with this, you could just plant this as a clump. They will actually grow on as a clump.
Okay.
You could just thin it to the strongest seedling.
Yeah.
If you've got like them in a clump, then you need to. If you've got 2 together like that, then you need to give them a bit more spacing. Okay. So instead of 10 centimetres, maybe 15 centimetres.
Okay.
Just see what happens. You'll get something with Pak Choi. It's not too risky. Then planting it. So the way I plant is just a small hole. Don't need to dig the soil. Put it in, and then ferment it thoroughly. Okay, so here we've got a nice cabbage plug. You can see the root ball is being held together nicely by the roots now. The cabbage plug could be a bit bigger, but it'll do. Whack it in.
And the cabbage is going to be about 20 centimetres apart.
Now, this is a spring cabbage. Spring cabbage, big plant. 30 to 40 centimetres.
Wow.
Because this is going to get this big, and it'll make a cabbage this big next spring.
Okay.
So this needs more space than the Pak Chois.
Okay.
Make sure really firmly planted in. And you can actually bury the seedling right up to the first leaves.
Okay.
Now, well, just to see if this cabbage is properly planted, let's pull the leaf. Yep. And if you look, the leaf tore, the plant sort of shuddered. Oh dear. But basically, the plant wants to be totally firm in the soil.
Yeah.
The plant gets away much more quickly that way because it's got a good contact between the roots and the soil. And it can just go straight into the soil, immediately access moisture from the soil. If it's just stuck in its little plug, in what is effectively in their pocket, it can stall.
Yeah. Do you need to now water that in?
You now need to water that in. Watering is part of the planting process. So some tips are make sure your plugs are well watered. Dry compost in wet soil stays dry.
Yeah.
Make sure your plugs are well watered.
Yeah.
And then water it again, even if it's raining, because that water is going to help pack the soil around those fine roots, which don't have a good contact with the soil around them yet.
Okay.
Gets them going.
Yep.
Once they're in the ground, aftercare depends on the weather. If it's hot and dry weather, you're going to need to be watering these tiny seedlings quite a lot, like at least daily. At least check them, because they can take a lot of damage if they wilt and they're lying on hot soil and cooking. It can still get quite hot at this time.
For the first couple of weeks, month?
Until they've started growing strongly. That could just be a few days.
Okay.
Until they've taken, basically. Until they've perked up and they're clearly on their way.
Okay.
Now, the other thing you can also do is that we mentioned that most of these plants go in 20 centimetres apart because they're quite small plants, or you're going to use them as come-again plants, and they don't need so much space. Something like a cabbage does need the space, so you're planting these tiny things about a foot to 40 centimetres apart.
Okay.
So the next one would be going, let's have a look, would be planted maybe here.
Wow.
And the next one will be here.
Okay.
Here what we've got is, we've got some spring cabbages. So at the end of September, October, we'll be giving out lots of cabbage seedlings. These are overwintering cabbages. They'll crop next May, maybe even into early June, depending on what happens over the winter.
Okay.
Now the thing about those is you plant them now, and you plant them quite far apart because they get quite large. That leaves lots of space in between.
Yep.
And something you can do with cabbages at any time of year, but also now, is intercrop them. So that means putting a quick, fast-growing crop in between to use all that, what looks like wasted space, which a cabbage doesn't need yet.
Okay.
So here we've got, we just plant a little pak choi, a dwarf pak choi in between. We could even plant maybe a row of pak chois or a cross of pak chois in between to use the space. And basically, all you've got to remember is to remove those before the cabbage takes over.
Okay.
Cabbage isn't really going to need the space until next February.
Okay, great.
So something quick, which will make a quick crop between now and, November, December, will work fine.
So you could almost get 2 pak choi crops in. Could you do another one in December?
No, because things start slowing down by then.
Okay.
So, you could use something slow. You could use a quick growing, in the summer if you're doing this, you could use a longer growing crop, like a quick growing lettuce, or kohlrabi is a very good intercrop. There's lots of different plants you can use. At this time of year, all we've really got for you is pak choi, which is super quick.
Yeah.
And we've still got some Asian radish seedlings, so next couple of weeks. And we've got some very fast-growing turnips. You could try with those, see how they work.
Okay.
And if you've got some radish seed at home, that's something else you could do.
Okay.
In the summer, you'd have a greater choice of intercrops.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Fabrice. I think we're done for this time.
There we are.